Okay, so I'm graphing it. I cannot see the entire parabola, so how do I fix that? I need to zoom.
Wait, what's the last?
I wouldn't suggest doing zoom out. So let's just go to our window settings. And we know that the X min and max is fine. The only thing I really need to fix most likely is going to be the Y max. So let's type in, somebody give me a number, something big, 300. Perfect. It's like you knew. You did. Okay, so 300. I can see the entire thing. So negative 10 to 10 is my X. And then you can say 0. I think it's on negative 6 right now to 300. I can see everything.
Why didn't it just let me specify?
So if I want to draw a sketch, just going to draw a sketch of it. You need to look at it. It looks something like this. Then it says, what is the height of the rocket after 2 seconds, after 2.5, after 3 seconds? Well, let's decide what our variables are. So in this case, our x-axis is going to be what? Time or height? Our x-axis. So what does our x represent? Time. So I'm going to put a time right here. Time in seconds. And then our y-axis is going to represent the height. So what is B saying? Is B is saying what is the y when x equals 2, 2.5, and 3? So how do I figure that out? On my calculator. You can go to Menu, Trace, Graph Trace. So I'm gonna show you that really quickly. So hold on. If you go to Menu, Trace, Graph Trace, and then you click 2, it's going to take you to the y value. If you click 2.5 or type in 2.5, it's going to take you to the y value, and then 3. So go ahead and do that really quickly. Okay, so what did you get what was the height at 2 seconds? 280, and what is the units? Feet? Is it feet? Yes. Make sure that you put the units, because I don't know what 280 means. Height after 2.5? 290 feet. Height after 3 seconds? 292 feet. How high does the rocket go? So what kind of question, what is that asking me? What's the vertex? What's the highest point? So how can I figure that out in my calculator? You can go to, I'm not going to show you because I don't want to get away from the screen. But if you go to Menu, Analyze Graph, and then Maximum, my maximum point, 292. 292.
So you have like a decimal with that? Would you include the decimal?
Yes, if it were a decimal, you would include the decimal. So when it says how high, it's asking for the height, but then question D is saying how long does it take for it to reach its highest point. So what is it asking me for there? The seconds. So the time. So what is that time? 2.87 seconds. So be sure that you are careful if is it asking me for the y or is it asking me for the x. So in this case, in C, it's asking me for y, and D is asking me for the x. Part E, it's saying how many seconds does it take for the rocket to be 250 feet high? So what kind of question, like what is it asking me here? It's asking me for seconds. So it's asking me for an x value when y equals 250. So there's two things you could do. One is really difficult and one is really easy. I'm gonna tell you what it would take to do the difficult part, but then I'm gonna show you the easy part. So what it's saying in the original equation is, let me go back to it. So negative 16x squared plus 92x plus 160. What this question is saying is, when does it equal 250? So if I were to do it algebraically, I would want to set it equal to 0, so I'd move the 250 over and solve, and either solve by factoring, completing the square, or quadratic formula, which would be really difficult because look how big those numbers are, right? I wouldn't want to do that algebraically. That is how technically you would do it. And you'll see some easier examples where it's easy to do it algebraically. But in this kind of example, you'd want to do it by graphing. So what you're going to do is I'm going to go back to my graph, and I'm going to type in a second function. So here it is. I'm going to add another function, menu, graph entry function, and I'm going to type in 250. So essentially this is the equation y equals 250. Just 250.
Wait, you go menu, graph, entry, then what?
250, or function, and then type in 250. From here, I'm going to see when does it intersect at 250. So I want to find the intersection. So menu, analyze graph, intersection. The first one is 1.25. And that's all it's asking me for because it just says how long does it take to get there. So I only need to report the first one. Okay, that's a good question. So 1.25 would be for part E. For part F, it says, when does the debris hit the ground? I think my menu has, or my window has somehow shifted, so I'm going to go back to it.
So y is seconds, right? 0 is the
Oh,
ground.
okay.
Okay, when it hits the ground, so imagine this rocket is floating, coming down. It hits the ground when y equals 0. So let's find the 0 of that. Menu, analyze graph, 0. Make sure that you click the parabola. And then the answer would be 7.15. And this is technically 0, negative 5.82 times 10 to the negative 11th. Sometimes the calculator will do weird things, but if you have it on just float, like I think my computer is not set on float, so it should say 0 for you.
How do we do float? 'Cause I have the same error.
I'm not sure. I will remember it after this.
Oh, it says like when you go to settings, it says float, but
It might be under the settings. Okay, the next question, it says, I'm going to go back to it.
So this is
Based on the graph of h of t, is the rocket being launched off the ground or off a building? Explain how you know. It's a good question.
well, let me tell you why. It is being launched off of a building
How come?
because it doesn't start at 0. It starts at whatever that number is, above 50.
Off a building because when time equals 0, like you can't have negative time, right? So when time equals 0, the height is what? How can we figure that out?
Intersection maybe? Nope. Wait.
So find out what the y value is when x is 0 seconds or when time is 0 seconds. And you can do that by hitting the trace.
Trace.
can you just type in x equals 0?
So you go to menu, trace, graph trace, and then just type in the number 0.
160 feet.
160 feet, good. So it's not starting from the ground, it's starting from a building that is 160
Couldn't
feet.
we have just known that from before whenever we put 160 as the y?
You could, but how would you know that it's 160 as the y?
It's a very good question.
All right, so those are types of questions. You might even see those when you get, if any of you are in physics right now, or if you will take physics one day. These are the types of questions you would see. Here's a few other types of examples that you might see that are just word problems of using quadratics. So let's look at them. Number 1, the length of a rectangle is 8 less than twice its width. If the area of the rectangle is 42 square units, find the length of the rectangle. So we need to know two things. Right now, we know that the area is 42. And what is the formula for area? Length times width. Now we want to create this equation to only have one variable. Either L, or in terms of L, or in terms of W. And what does this first problem tell me?
That it's,
The
I don't
length
know.
is 2w minus 8.
Perfect. So the length is 2w minus 8. Twice its width minus 8. So I'm going to substitute 2w minus 8 times width.
Wait, wouldn't it be length? You mean length?
Nope, width. Then I only have w's.
Length is-
I replaced length with this. I just substituted it.
Oh, yep, I read.
And that equals 42. So now I'm going to treat this just like it's a quadratic equation. So I'm going to distribute the w, move everything over, factor, and solve for w. Okay, so let's just start with distributing this w. So 2w squared minus 8w. And let's go ahead and subtract the 42. Let's just do it all in one step. Equals 0.
Yep.
Now I want you, let's solve it. So what could I do first if I'm solving?
Divide by 2.
Divide by 2. And let's try factoring this.
Can you try on there?
Yes.
So you have two answers? Oh wait.
So what did you get when you factored? W plus 3 and W minus. When I set those equal, I get W equals -3 and W equals 7, but only one of those will work.
Where did the 3 come from?
I'm gonna go with 7 because 6 times 7 is 42.
What did you do with 6?
When he plugged it in for the other variable. Okay, why will only the 7 work and why will -3 not work?
Because a negative times another, the other number has to be negative.
Well, can you have a negative width?
No.
No. Negatives will never work in these scenarios, so the negative answer will never work. Because you can't have negative width. So then it says find the length of the rectangle. So 2 times 7 minus 8 gives me 6. So the length would be 6. Now, what you're probably thinking is, I probably could have just guessed and checked that and gotten the answer. If any of you were thinking that.
Yeah.
Now, in this question, yes, that is true. That's a true statement. But for the test, you have to use the formula. And I'm going to give you one, like what if it were like 335 and 222 or something crazy? where you can't just guess and check. So you know I'm going to put one on there where you can't just guess and check. So you have to use the equation. So the only equation that you need to know is area equals length times width. And then solving a quadratic. Okay, let's look at the next one. So it says, find 3 positive consecutive integers such that the square of the first number increased by twice the last number is 39. So reading all of that seems kind of like crazy. It blows my mind. But let's just dissect it a little bit at a time. Kind of like, you know how you dissect Bible verses? It's the same kind of thing, you know?
No.
Yes.
That's not
We're just going to look at it a little biblical integration.
What do you mean square the first number?
Okay, let's just take it one step at a time. So
Could you say like square root of a times 2c? So like a could be the first and c could be the third.
let's look at, I think so, but I need to check. What does it mean when I say consecutive numbers?
1, 2, 3.
Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'm going to write something down, and I want you to just process it for a second. If I call the first number, so if I've got 3 numbers, I'm going to call the first number x. I'm going to call the second number x plus 1. And I'm going to call the third number x plus 2.
Oh my gosh, that makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Well,
To me,
yes.
Okay. Just want you to process that. That's all we're doing right now. 3 consecutive numbers.
Literally just not that. Like,
So this is my first number. It's my first number, my second number, my third number. Like number 1, number 2, number 3. And that's how I'm referring to them from the problem.
Well, Miss Thornhill,
Yes.
but wait.
We haven't done anything else but just call those my first, second, and third number. And they're consecutive.
Okay.
Yes, Graham.
So on the test, there will be questions that you won't be able to just guess.
Yes. Then it says
this goes
the
into
square, listen, the square of the first number. I want you to write, what is the square of the first number?
X squared.
X squared, good. So I'm going to write x squared.
Okay.
Increased,
That's plus.
that's plus.
Yep.
It's like a special code word. Twice the last number.
2, and then in parentheses x plus 2.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's right.
Equals 30.
Is the equal sign. 39 is 39.
Okay.
We did it. Now we just got to solve. So I'm going to leave that up to you. I want you to solve like you would any other quadratic, which means you're probably going to factor it. So get everything to one side, factor, and solve for x. Okay, so I distributed the 2, moved the 39 over, factored it. But why can it not be negative 7? Because it says positive. If it said negative, then it would be negative 7. And then it would be negative 6, negative 5. But in this case, it says positive integers. So then it would be 5, 6, 7. Like I said, you could probably guess that.
Wait.
And you could sit there and trial and error and guess and check. But you have to use the equation on the test. I'm not going to give you one that you can guess.